Hello students, today we are going to explain your theme 3, that is Kinship, Caste and Class, Early Societies 600 BCE to 600 CE. Historians use textual sources to understand socio-economic and political conditions and the changes during a period under study. And in this chapter, we are going to look in some details at the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is a colossal epic running in its present form into over 1 lakh verses with depictions of a wide range of social categories and situations, one of the richest texts of the subcontinents. It was composed over a period of about 1,000 years, that is from 500 BCE onwards, and the central story is about two sets of warring cousins. The text also contains sections laying down norms of behavior for various social groups. Mahabharata hi Sanskrit epic poem lathu ania. Epic kan ti chuan ro pui lai thil ti nani. Mahabharata hian in chang nuai khat vel nein pol sang din mun zia lan ania. Subcontinent a chuan thu changa ber ani hian ani. Tichuan Mahabharata hi kumzabi sang khat lai vela phua ania. He lathu ina athopui ken ber chu unau indo chanchin ani. Kauravas le Pandavas te ania. He indo na ne tu zok chu Pandavas ani te kha in lo shadonia o. And next we go to the critical additions of this Mahabharata. One of the most ambitious projects of scholarship began in 1919 under S.V. Suktankar, and a team comprising dozens of scholars initiated a task of preparing a critical editions of this Mahabharata, comparing the verses from each manuscript, and then they selected the verses that appeared common to most versions and published this in several volumes running into over 13,000 pages, and the project took 47 years to complete. And the Sanskrit versions of the stories was found evidence in the manuscript all over the subcontinents, from Kashmir and Nepal in the north to Kerala and Tamil Nadu in the south. Also evident were enormous regional variations in the ways in which the text had been transmitted over the centuries. So, our understanding of this process is derived primarily from texts written in Sanskrit, and these subsequently scholars began studying other traditions from works in Pali, Prakrit and Tamil, and these studies indicate that the ideas contained in normative Sanskrit texts were on the whole recognized as authoritative. There were also questions and occasionally even rejected. It is important to keep this in mind as we examine how historians reconstruct these social histories. Okay? Hele khabuchwa Mahabharata hi S.V. Suktankaran ruwa manna felfai taknen. Endik na hi 1990 na khanin alo thok tawa ti chuanin scholars tam tak te poin zirchian na an nei bok ani ti chuan chang tina athuzia kha an khai khina achang tlanglon common ber kha an thlang chuak thin ani mo chuan an chu chuaka lekhabu cha tak phek 13,000 neya an siam ta ni chu o chuan he Mahabharata chang tlanglon tak an chhuat te hi Kashmir te Nepal te Kerala Tamil Nadu te an story an lo soidanin khanin a in ang hle bok anin chuan historians and traditions dang Pali kan ti te Prakrit te Tamil te zirchian an han nei lia Mahabharata social categories sang an zia dan neng khanin ain zu zui hle bok ani chuan hemia wang hian zawna ati tampa hle boka historians te pon hriat fia tumin thei top chhoin an be ani awm zia chu he mahabharata lekhabu siam chungchang ah hian soisel na nasa taka thok ani achan chu enge single authority in a pile up ani lo awangin zawna tam takha apian pha zawna atam pha em bok ani chu and next we go to kinship and marriage. Many rules and varied practice finding out about families. People belonging to the same family share foods and other resources and live, work, and perform rituals together. Families are usually parts of larger networks of people defined as relatives, or to use a more technical term, kinfolk. Historians can retrieve information about these elite families fairly easily. It is, however, far more difficult to reconstruct the familial relationships of these ordinary people. Historians also investigate and analyze attitude toward these families and kinship as well. Chung ko khata cheng te chuanin an man rua an thil nei te anin tawm vek selani an ein an inza a an thok hoa sa khorong bol na lama ni se an chung kwa khan an ti ho thin ani chu ti chuan historian te chuanin thu thak thu la khom hi ordinary people ti ain ordinary people kan ti chuan minaran mipa ngai ho ai chuanin heng elite family mi chal langte chhungkwa zirchian hi a olzok ani anti ni chu and next we go to this the idols of patrilineage. They trace descendants from father to son, and the war of this Mahabharata established that in terms of rightful inheritance, and there is a variations that in case of absence of son, brother, they accept this son-in-law as the successors, and in very exceptional circumstances, women such as Prabhati Gupta exercise power. Ole pa berro re na hnuaia an oma chuan Mahabharata a indo chanchin mo unaw indo chanchin atang khanin ro khom dan chungchang te po khan chiang taka zia lan ania chuanin chung ko pa ber khanin fapa emo unaw pa emo lo nei lo ta se amak pa in athil nei a in le lo te a ro chun thei ti te awm bok ani chu ma se hmun then khata chuanin meichia in thu nei na te po an chang ve tho ani chumi ti chiang tur chuan heta kan soi Prabhavati Gupta Chandragupta Fanu khanin thu nei na kha akeng ko tlat ani chuan we go to this rule of marriage. While sons were important for the continuity of the patrilineage, daughters were viewed rather differently within his framework. They had no claims to the resources of the household. At the same time, marrying them into families outside the kin was considered desirable. This system is called exogamy, meaning that the lives of young girls were often carefully regulated to ensure that they were married at the right time and to the right person. This gave rise to the beliefs that Kanyadana, or the gifts of daughters in marriage, was an important religious duties of the father. Okay, and what is interesting is that the Dharma Sutras and these Dharma Sutras recognized as many as 8 forms of marriage. Of these, the first 2 were considered good, while the remainings were condemned. This is possible that these were practiced by those who did not accept these Brahminical norms. Okay, mi pa fa pa chu chung ko nam kha tu atang khanin an poi mo reng ani ma se meichia fanu te din mun ero adang deu lai chin hnai ne na in nei kha an du zawk tha zawk an ti ani chu ti chuan in nei chung changa zom tur dan chi hrang hrang pariat lai an nei a chung zinga a hmasa pali te chu an dan pariat nei zinga a hmasa pali te chu tha an ti a nu hnung pali te ro chu tha an ti lo thung ani maw chuan he nu hnung zawk pali an dan nu hnung zawk pali te hi brahmanas van tlang nun in kai hruaina zawm ve lo ten an hmang tlang pui ani chu and next we go to this the gota of women. Each gota was named after a Vedic seer, and all those who belonged to the same gota were regarded as his descendants. Two rules about gotas were particularly important. Women were accepted to give up their father's gota and adopt that of their husbands on marriage, and members of the same gota could not marry. On one way to find out whether this was commonly followed is considered the names of men and women, which were sometimes derived from the gota names. These names are available for powerful ruling lineage such as the Satavahanas, who ruled over parts of this western India, and the Deccans during the 2nd century BCE, 2nd century CE. Okay? Gota means khat tubul khat surname nam tepot tila adik thau meichhia in pasal anei huna khanin apasal nam kha atrom tur ani chuan kha tubul khat in nei kha anrem tilo ni chu ti chuan next a chuan in were mothers important. Okay, we have seen that Satavahana's rulers were identified through matronymics name derived from that of the mother. Although this may suggest that mothers were important, we need to be cautious before we arrived at any conclusions. In the case of the Satavahanas, we know that successions to the throne was generally patrilineage. Nu te hi an poimo em ti zo na ama poimo te re meitro Satavahanas rulers te hi chuanin an nu te nam kha an nu te nam atang hianin an ni na anin thliar thang zawk thin ti na ni chu he hianin nu te poimo zia atilang hle ni te ro ti chuan ma se successions ai on na lalna in ro chun tur chung changa chuan mi pa fa an ni thung ani khati zong kha voina kan explain thei chu ni. Thank you all.